Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts, sports journalist David Todd, and from SteelersDepot.com, Dave Bryan. Just a couple of Daves, chillin', talking Steelers. Now, here's Dave and Dave.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Dave. He's Dave Bryan of SteelersDepot.com, the place to get your latest and greatest Steelers information. And I'm David Todd. It's Season 9, Episode 11. And Dave, the Steelers are coming home. Couple preseason games on the road, and they had a little practice, family fest, or whatever they called it yesterday. And now they get an extended time to practice at the UPMC Rooney Sports facility over on the south side and get ready for the game, which is at a kind of an odd time, 4 o'clock on Saturday. Next one up.
Yeah, in fact, I think they have Monday off, today off, and then they're going to try to work this week as close as possible to the way they would a regular weekend season to try to get some of these younger guys that might ultimately make the roster, acclimated to the way things, happen. What do you think about, if you were the Baltimore Ravens, there's a game tonight, right? Monday. They now have, 3 games in a matter of, 12 days or whatnot to close out the preseason. You can't be very happy about that, right? And I guess the Colts for that matter too, because that's who they're playing against.
Yeah, so, I was thinking about that, and the way I'm sure they look at it is you're going to have your second and third teamers go in this one mostly, and then you would think you're grinding your starters ready for the short rest one coming up this week, and then the last one that everybody plays on Thursday or Friday, the following weekend to Labor Day weekend, you're not going to have any of your guys go. So fortunately, this is when it's good to have 90 guys on the roster. So you can manage this, but certainly, as you say, it's not the ideal scenario. And for the Steelers, you just think about how they're going to work here. This is the week where they're really going to get a good week of work in here. So Tuesday through Friday, which Friday being light because you got a Saturday game. And by the way, for those of you not in Pittsburgh, it is on the NFL Network on Saturday at 4 o'clock with the Titans coming into Pittsburgh. And then, Dave, they'll probably have Sunday off. And then they have a very short, or, they'll come in on Sunday, but they'll have a very short work week for that Thursday game. And then you're looking at the Labor Day weekend. So it's an odd time in terms of getting work done. That's why Mike makes it so clear that he is really focused on getting work done while they're up at St. Vincent College and this week. Because then what happens, because of the nature of the games, because of the holiday weekend, because of the cut down dates, practices, they're kind of intermittent almost, and they're probably lacking the intensity. So I would imagine it's very nice weather in Pittsburgh kind of today, supposed to be okay this week, that they will, they'll get a couple good days of work in going into that game on Saturday. And actually the weather is supposed to be beautiful coming into Saturday as well. It's if you're in Pittsburgh. Thursday and Friday are going to be great. It's looking overcast, but only a high of 80, a low of 64 on Saturday if you're actually going to that game. But this is a significant week. And Dave, on the back of that, why don't you take us through where the Steelers are with injuries? Because, it's time to start talking about whether any of these injuries are impactful in terms of how we're thinking about the roster.
Yeah, absolutely. And, obviously you've got some of the bigger names like Vance McDonald still remains sidelined with the.
Now, here's my question for you on Vance McDonald. Is this impacting Vance McDonald's future with the Steelers? Not necessarily this year's future, but does the fact that we've now seen him, even he has a bit of a history, and in his limited time, he's been banged up. Is he killing himself?
Well, I think a lot of it's going to depend on what happens during the regular season. Obviously, you hate that you've gone almost a full Well, you have really. I mean, he got hurt early on in training camp, so another full training camp. Whereas we were talking, oh great, at least Vance McDonald now has a full training camp to work with Ben Roethlisberger. Well, that's out the door. Is he in jeopardy? I guess I don't understand the question. I mean, it's all going to depend.
So he's making roughly, I don't know what he's going to be making.
You're not going to cut him now.
No, right. I agree. But so he's making. Here's what I'm asking you: if he has a pretty good season and he's making 4 point something next year, and 3.5 of that or 3.2 of that becomes guaranteed on April 1st, are the Steelers going to have to move on from Vance McDonald like they did Ladarius Green because of injury? Now, is it 100% based on the season? Or I guess what I'm asking is, does the fact that he's missed 3 weeks of this preseason impact that decision that's coming up next April?
He needs to have a good season. He needs to have a very good season. Period. He doesn't need to miss 4, 5, 6, 7 games.
Yeah, if he does, if he's done.
Right. I mean, no matter at some point, what he can be is surpassed by what has he done?
what he is.
What he is, right. And either this guy's extremely unlucky, or there is such a thing as injury prone, or what have you. The fact of the matter is most of his NFL career has been probably spent on an NFL training table, right? And here we are with a foot injury this year. So, I mean, is there a reason to be concerned about him? Absolutely, there is. I mean, this is a guy that we have to caution every time we say his name. If only, if this, if that, and usually do those if you have to keep cautioning when using a guy's name like that, how do things normally probably work out in the long run,
Odds the Steelers go tight end in the first 3 rounds of the 2019 draft.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me one bit, David. I mean, it really wouldn't surprise me one bit. So I don't know, high. Yeah, exactly. All right, Vance McDonald with the foot. T.J. Watt remains out with a hamstring. He did some pregame work against the Packers. Didn't look like he was pushing it all that hard in some of the video that I saw. He still maintains, I might be back hopefully soon. We don't know how soon is. I mean, there's 10 days in between that work he did in Green Bay versus the upcoming game against the Titans. We'll see. I mean, obviously you want the eye on him being ready by the start of the regular season, but at the same time, you would like to get him a little bit of work, I would think, at left outside linebacker in one of these 2 preseason games. So, I mean, I'm not even going to guess when it comes to him. Stephen Ridley, undisclosed. Safety Marcus Allen, hamstring. Cornerback Mike Hilton, undisclosed. Matthew Marks he found on the tape last night. And we put a post up on it on Steelers Depot. That first punt that Mike Hilton ran down in that game against the Packers, he bumped into a player down there and came up kind of lame and didn't play a single snap since then, and then didn't work last night. So that's how he got injured. It's some sort of lower body injury, I think left side, maybe, I don't know, twisted an ankle or something. So that's what's up with Mike Hilton. Fitz Toussaint, knee. Safety Morgan Burnett, undisclosed. Center Patrick Morris, undisclosed. Guard Ramon Foster, knee. Chukwuma Okorofor, shoulder. Of course, Antonio Brown, tight end. Xavier Grimble had some surgery on wrist, hand, supposed to sideline him maybe probably until the start of the regular season. Dan McCullers' hamstring were those that didn't take part in the 11-on-11 drills Sunday night at Heinz Field. So I know it's a long list, but and Alex and I have said this for most of the offseason. When you look at it, the totality of it, compared to what's going on around the league, the Steelers are in great shape. Now, obviously, we'll have to see about some of these guys like Grimble and Vance McDonald and, T.J. Watt, obviously. But, it doesn't look, reiterate what Mike Tomlin said the other day, it doesn't look like anything, serious at this point in time. But you do have 2 preseason games remaining.
Yeah, it's always one of those things. You never know whether the Steelers are just being conservative with guys, which is probably always the right thing to do here at this point in the preseason. Let guys get to 100% because they're never going to be 100% again. So if it's a question of pushing them back a day or two earlier and they're at 80% or 90%, there doesn't, for particularly for the veteran guys, there doesn't seem to be a lot of need for that type of thing. But when you're talking about guys missing 3 weeks, I'm not really worried about Vance McDonald knowing the playbook. I'm not worried about T.J. Watt necessarily knowing the playbook or his assignments, but you just like to get some reps. I mean, look, I've said all along, so I don't want to be hypocritical, that I think it's, insignificant. Really. I mean, I know not everybody agrees with me. This is just my personal view. I think it's relatively insignificant that Le'Veon Bell in year, 5 is missing the entire, camp. He's been with these guys. He knows what's up. He knows the playbook. Yeah, there's a new offensive coordinator. They're not changing things dramatically. So I don't have any problem with that. I do think if you're on the defensive side of the ball and you're new like Morgan Burnett or, you're trying to work schemes and coordinate with guys more, each guy doing a certain thing, which Le'Veon Bell didn't have to worry about that as much. So I think it's a little bit more significant on the defensive side when guys miss time. But hopefully these things, as you said, Dave, hopefully these are just, you're being conservative, making sure guys are okay. And it certainly will be interesting to see who runs this week with whom, and then how they play the game Saturday. Because, if you want to pay attention to one game, this is obviously the one to watch.
Yes, it is. The annual quote-unquote tune-up game. You got some emails for us?
I do. Let's get it. So we've talked about this, and, I just wanted to kind of – these emails we got from some of our female listeners were very touching, for lack of a better word. And it's all, we love hearing from our listeners. It's great. And wanted to just read a couple more of these that we have received over the past 2 weeks since we asked about this. So I'm just trying to pull them up here so that I'm coordinating my emails. Give me 1 second. So here's a bunch of people that we heard from. I can't read all of these, and I'm going to just, some of the people we heard from: Marjorie G, Carol C, Lori, Gina, Ashley. We read Jean and Claudette and Shelly Ann's emails last week. Jennifer, Katie, Gina. So here are a couple that I wanted to highlight from our listeners. And this is from Renee, I think is what it is. And so Renee said, "Hi, I'm a regular." Renee's handle, by the way, is Steelers Gal in NE. "Hi, Dave and Dave. I'm a regular female listener to the podcast, and my blood runs black and gold. Was 12 years old and 75, so loved every minute of the Steel Curtain years. I've been living in New England since 1989, so I'm an expat, as it were, who's had to put up with the gloating. So truly enjoyed the Eagles win last year, albeit the real season ended for me with the Jags game. My Twitter handle is Steelers Gal in New England, but it's locked down because I'm a nut when it comes to football and hate on the Pats, but have to live with these people on Monday. I put football away in February. Don't listen to any podcasts until August. But Dave B, I love your voice. It brings me back to my roots. Sure hope we get number 7. Want to enjoy Super Bowl with my 86-year-old dad." So Renee, I hope that's I pronounced that right, in Nashua, New Hampshire. So that was a good one.
My voice takes her back to what?
to her roots. Her roots.
All right. I hope that's a good thing.
So Alyssa, "Hi, Dave and Dave. I tweeted but thought I might also email to give you some more context to my listening. I'm a 27-year-old woman, and I listen to every podcast that you two make. I love it and can confirm that most of Dave's pop culture references go over my head. Most recently, that song about the clowns. I actually found the show because I specifically searched for Steelers podcasts on my phone app. I moved from Pittsburgh to Arkansas in 2013 to become a teacher, and there's barely any NFL news. That's suey, pig suey. That's hog country down there, the Razorbacks, let alone Steelers news here. So I needed a way to stay connected. I listened to y'all on the long drive from Arkansas to Florida one winter break, and you made my trip fly by. I've been loyally listening for years now. I really appreciate the context and like to listen while I run or do mindless schoolwork like alphabetizing student papers. I enjoy it for my own knowledge, but also you two give me a lot of street cred with my students. I continually impress them with my deep knowledge of the game of football, the Steelers, and news from around the league. Thanks for making the show, Alyssa. All right, Alyssa, thank you for listening. And we'll read one more, and this is Alyssa with an E. We got an Alyssa with an A and an Alyssa with an E. So, Alyssa, hi, Dave and Dave. I'm willing to take part in your audience poll and tell you how much I love the Terrible Podcast, or, as my husband refers to it, my Yinzer podcast. I'm a 45-year-old female, was born and raised in Pittsburgh, and I'm a graduate of Pitt. No Twitter machine for me, but I do check the website almost daily to get the latest and greatest Steelers news. My father has been a football coach and a referee my entire life. He's still working as a high school referee, as a matter of fact. I came home from the hospital as a baby wrapped in a terrible towel, and I've bled black and gold ever since. I love my Steelers and all the wonderful memories they have been given me throughout my life. My dad took me to Canton and Latrobe many times, and my parents hosted the most amazing Super Bowl parties. He taught me the fundamentals over dinner with carrots and peas and never brought me home at halftime for a live game in the winter, despite telling me my mom he would. I left Pittsburgh in 1998, but moved back to the Burgh in 2011. It was amazing to see the city's transformation and go to some games at Heinz Field. My husband and I moved to London in 2016, and shortly thereafter, I found your podcast. It was a bit of a rough sports adjustment with the time zone and few people to chat NFL with, but I'm grateful to get all the games on Game Pass. So thanks to all of you. Sorry for the long email. I want to thank you all for the amazing podcast. I'm happy that I found a way to stay connected to my beloved team, even though I'm so far away. The three of you are a great team, including Alex, and I look forward to your podcast more than you know. I enjoy each of your personalities and dynamic and what you bring to the coverage and analysis of the team. I hope that Dave and Dave get a chance to meet in person someday. So do I. I'll be making my first trip back to Pittsburgh at the end of September, and I'm so excited to go to the Ravens game. Keep doing what you're doing. Chart stats, contextualize, refer to old movies, and head down as many rabbit holes as you like. All the best, Alyssa. So great stuff. That's why we do what we do, Dave. We got 50 more like that. I'm sorry we couldn't read them all, but appreciate all our female listeners, and nice to be able to pick a couple of those out of the list.
Boy, I'm trying to hold back some tears here. I can't wait to run in and tell my wife that I'm still pretty popular with the ladies. I think that'll get an eye roll or something like that maybe out of her. Okay. Certainly do appreciate that feedback there. David, how important is the preseason? And before David and I get into this discussion, we're going to try to have our buddy Chris Hoke back on either.
He's in Wednesday morning. So, if you've never heard, surely most of you out there that have been listeners know who Chris Hoke is and have heard him on the podcast before. He's one of our longtime listeners, as a matter of fact, and he's so great at what he does. Well, one of the things, and David and I set this up this morning after a quick conversation, is want to ask Chris specifically about what kind of goes into the game planning in, say, the first two preseason games versus this week's tune-up game. So, Hokey Bro obviously played under both Bill Cowher and Mike Thomas, so he should be able to give some good perspective to as far as what's expected, especially on the defensive side of the ball out of players. And the reason this all came up is I contextualized Bud Dupree's pass rushes from the other night against the Packers. And I thought I was very fair with it. I just wanted to, put out there, dispel a couple of rumors that are floating around about how he played against David Bakhtiari, their starting left tackle, who was only in for, I think it was 3 series, 20-something snaps or something like that. Bud played a couple possessions after that. But I thought I put it together very fair. Well, Bud did not like what I wrote about him. And I hate to call Bud out, but, he DM'd me last night and chastised me quite a bit. For writing up what I did. And A, I'm a bit amazed why the heck are players giving a crap about what's written about them on a blog. And B, was it even worth reaching out
out to me, because knowing that he must not listen to the podcast, but now 12,000 people know that he sent me a DM. But look, our job as analysts is to write and talk about what we see, and especially during the preseason, make sure that we don't what's the word? Don't
too excited.
Right, get too excited either way. I mean, you don't want to. You want to just put it out there as observation and not condemn or because a lot can change during the regular season. This was his first snaps of this preseason. He obviously missed a lot of practice time due to a concussion, but at the same time, how many years worth of snaps, pass rushing snaps, have we seen? Do you believe Bud Dupree was just told, go out there and just rush the passer whatever way you want to, and make sure not to show any of your counter moves or anything like that? Do you believe any of that? And really, I mean, I think that boils down to the main reason why I want to have Chris Hoke back on, is to see what kind of the mentality is. I mean, is there reasons to be concerned maybe about this defense giving up 30-something points the other night to the Packers? How worried is Chris Hoke about the inside linebacker situation? How worried is Chris Hoke about the outside linebacker situation? Does he view the secondary as a better group than the one that ended the season last year? Those kind of things. So what are your thoughts on Bud taking issue on my contextualization of his pass rush attempts the other night?
Are you asking me or our listeners?
Yes. Here is the DM that Bud.
No. DM.
Okay.
Yeah. Look, I think I'm surprised.
Let's just put it this way: there's some bad words in it.
Yeah, it's a DM. It was meant to be private. So I'm a little surprised Bud, took the time to reach out, but one of two things. One is he knows the site's out there and exists, or somebody pointed him to it and said, look, I know you put the post up and I know we've talked about it. I haven't, so my problem is I haven't gone through I went through the second time watching the film and spent all my time watching the quarterbacks and less time watching what the defense was doing. And I didn't focus on Bud. So I'll have to watch it again in the context of your article. But I mean, I went over your article and nothing seemed out of line. The only thing I like to say about the preseason is, look, Joe Thomas isn't going to be in there at left tackle very often, and Green Bay's left tackle was in there for, as Dave said, a couple series. They're starting left tackle, and Bud made some plays, and I'm sure Bud walked off the field thinking that he played pretty well. So I'm sure if he reads anything that doesn't say Bud played well, he's annoyed by it. And I think Bud probably, in the argument I was talking to somebody about Pro Football Focus again the other day, and this was a guy who is an inside football guy. And it's always the question of, look, the guys at Pro Football Focus don't say they're perfect. What they're trying to do with the information they have is, they're grading every play, and they acknowledge that, they're not going to get every grade on every play right, but they're going to get the majority of right because it's football. It's not, split in the atom. So they're going to miss a couple, but they're going to get most of them right. And you deal with that and understand that the context within which they're dealing. Now, when you're talking about a wide receiver running a route, that's pretty straightforward stuff. When you're talking about offensive line blocking, that's mostly straightforward stuff. And when you're asking a linebacker whether he's supposed to, stunt or drop or, rush from the edge, you generally get that right. But when one guy blows an assignment, it may look like, a bunch of other guys did something wrong because a different individual blew the assignment. So it's one of these things. And Dave and I understand, and I think all our listeners do. You guys, our listeners are the best. They understand that, we're doing the best we have with the information we have. And if we were, the offensive and defensive coordinator and had these conversations, obviously they would be somewhat different. But we're not. You guys get it. So, Dave took a view of kind of how things went. And it's like when a guy comes, when an offensive, let's say the running back completely misses the block on an edge rush and he's supposed to get over and get Dupree, and Dupree comes in untouched, and gets a clean sack on the quarterback. Is that a good sack or bad sack? Well, the answer is it's a good sack. You did what you were supposed to do. You didn't have to beat anybody. Somebody else made a mistake, but that's not your fault. But then the question is, if you have 6 sacks on the season and 5 of them were like that, and you didn't show you could beat a guy on your own, what does that say about your skill level and your talent? And those are the things that, those are the barroom debates, or those are the terrible podcast debates. If you got 6 sacks and 5 of them were because somebody else made a mistake, it's good that you took advantage of the other individual's mistake and were able to convert on that. That's important because that doesn't always happen. But at the same time, you'd like to see a player dominate with skill or talent, the player opposite him at times, to show that, he's an elite player at the highest level. So those are kind of the things that we're talking about. And I imagine, that's the context Dave was trying to put Bud's performance in. And Bud, I think, was, thinking that, I made some plays. What's the big deal? Why would you be at all critical?
Right. Well, yeah. But my job is to look at inside the grade, right? I mean, Bud Dupree graded out pass rush grade on Pro Football Focus for his play the other night, 81.3, which is damn strong. All right?
It's very good, right? Very good. If you're in the high 80s, it's elite.
Right. I mean, he's that real dark green shade. And his overall defensive score was 72.8, the little bit of a lighter shade of green, but still it was a good score. I'm not trying to say that Bud Dupree had a bad game. I just wanted to look at, and especially because, someone else had written at another place that he had his way with David Bakatari. Well, I mean, that's just not true. If people read, my job is to properly educate people about what happened if they're not able to watch the game 15 times like I do. And my point was, yes, he had 4 pressures in the game. He obviously had the sack. He had a couple of hurries in the game. I wanted to point out how those came so people know. I'd hate for some guy to walk into a bar and start saying, boy, Bud, I read about Bud Dupree, man, this guy's going to be all-pro Pro Bowler, and at the other end of the bar is Dave Bryan, God bless him, telling him that, whoa, buddy, you better pump the brakes there on Bud Dupree. Did you watch all the snaps? Because a couple of his wins were the typical Bud run around the corner, and this time it was against a backup left tackle, and the other 2 he came free up the middle. So slow down on the beer and pretzels right there. I mean, let's wait and see a little bit more. And that's, in so many words, what I was trying to say. We've seen Bud win the edge. We've seen, I even wrote in a post, he has a great get-off. We've seen that. What we need to see out of Bud is counters, him using those hands more, him doing other things than running around the edge. Now, was Bud told to run around the edge on those 2 plays where, I mean, they're almost identical. I mean, I don't know if you pulled them up, but the pressure and then the sack are almost identical pass rushes. That he won on. And, the thing is we've seen that. We want to see him win other ways because, quite honestly, Dave, if he has, I don't know what you think about quality of sacks and ranking those. Another thing that we can try to contextualize. But even if he has 8-9 sacks this year, if half of those are kind of like cleanup sacks, after 3.5 seconds and all like that, is he going to be really worth picking up that 5th-year option of his? I mean, this is a big season for Bud Dupree. Maybe he's feeling the pressure. Look, I don't hate the guy for DMing me. I since I've started writing and blogging and all, it's not uncommon for players to end up blocking me on Twitter because of me being at some point, critical.
Sure.
Of them.
Is there a player? We got somebody yelled at us the other day for questioning Antonio Brown. We get, somebody sent us an email about, how can you ever criticize Antonio Brown for anything? He's the greatest receiver ever. Well, those 2 things aren't related. what he does off the field, if he makes, does a boneheaded thing or is rude to people, I'm absolutely going to criticize him, as are you. It's, they're different things. And, when Ben throws a bad interception, it doesn't mean Ben's a bad quarterback. It means on that play, maybe he made a bad decision. Again, I think most of our readers get it. Their listeners get it. And it's just, So I'm sure we have been praiseworthy of virtually every player at some time, and I'm sure we've been critical of every player at some point.
David, I think what some people maybe that listen to this, and hopefully a lot of people get it, and we don't expect them. At some point, your compassion, let me say, your passion for the team. I wouldn't say
for some it outweiws objectivity, for sure.
Right.
And that's just, that's understandable. That's being a fan, right?
Right. And what you and I have had to do over the years, you being in media and me trying to run a successful blog, is you have to move from that fanatic to more of a analyst, I guess, and try to be as objective as you can to some very kind of subjective type decisions, if you will. And look, I used to get upset as any of you out there listening to this when the Steelers would lose. Now, I got to be quite honest with you now. Whether I don't flinch a muscle if they win or lose. Is that bad? I obviously want them to win, but
you don't point to what?
I said I don't flinch a muscle.
Oh, right.
Whether they win or lose, I want them to win. I obviously, am still passionate about the team from hoping they do good aspect of it, but I don't lose sleep. It doesn't ruin my week maybe the way it would have 20 years ago, with the team. And I think that's just a byproduct of what I have to do now, for the site. And I you're the same way with, during the time in radio or whatnot. We don't have, at least I don't have any personal vendetta against any of these players. And even as nasty as some of them have treated me in the past, I understand they're in the heat of battle and they're wanting to do good, and they hate to read. I tell you one thing I wouldn't do is I would not, if I'm a player, I would not read my site or the media or anything in general. I just think it's dangerous to put any kind of negative into your head like that, or what could be construed maybe as negative. You see what I'm getting at here? People need to understand, and any players as well too, not that they're listening to this, but none of this should be taken personal. We just try to dive into things and break things down as best as we can, as objective as we can, and be quite honest, there's probably not many of our listeners out there, that are thinking, man, I sure want Bud Dupree to have a great year and show us more and live up to that fifth-year option amount this year. And that's one of the things that we're going to be tracking, good, bad. And if he does good and shows us things that we haven't seen before, you can bet we're going to highlight it. But we're also going to contextualize, 14 meaningless pass rush snaps against the Green Bay Packers as well.
Yeah. I think that's fair. All right. What else we got?
Oh, wow. I got so wrapped up in that. I went back through all the quarterback throws once again from Dobbs and Mason Rudolph, and they didn't look any prettier or better. Here's the thing I want to get out about Dobbs. Now, look, people all of a sudden now think I have this hatred towards Joshua Dobbs. That's not the case. I broke this guy down probably not as extensively as I did Landry this year, but quite a bit last year for people to remember those post-selection write-ups that I did on his tape and all like that. What if Landry Jones had thrown those two same type of touchdown passes Thursday night against the Packers that Dobbs did, David? What would be the general narrative related to that?
Oh, well, look, if Landry Jones does anything wrong, he is just, get the pitchforks out. So, that's what it is. It's interesting. And I still don't understand honest to God, I think it's like the Steeler fans view the Landry Jones half against, who was it, the Lions or the Eagles, when he threw 4 interceptions in a preseason game?
Right.
So, 2 of which were not his fault, but he throws 4 interceptions and a half. They view that with more significance than the game he played against the Patriots this past year, where if Jesse James' pass is called a touchdown, they win the game. I mean, I do not understand the perception of Steeler fans toward some Steeler fans toward Landry Jones. Look, I'm not saying Landry Jones is one of the 32 best quarterbacks in the NFL. I think Landry Jones is one of the better 16 backup quarterbacks in the NFL. But the idea that Landry Jones is not a competent guy in the NFL it's not accurate. And there are a lot of people out there who are A, mad that they drafted him in the first place, B, mad that he's still around, and C, seemingly only remember that he had a terrible half of a preseason game a couple of years ago. He's been average. His performance when he's been asked to play in NFL games has been totally acceptable as a backup quarterback.
What did you think? What did you think about those 2 touchdowns? If both those are intercepted, what's the narrative? Those exact throws.
Dobbs is cut.
Right.
They're both intercepted. People are cutting them this week.
I mean, they were very interceptable. They weren't great.
Sure.
They weren't. I mean, thank God you have a guy like James Washington. To me, it says more about James Washington than it does about Joshua Dobbs. Those two particular plays. Now, someone wrote, well, he had trust in his guys to make those throws, that they're make the plays. You don't go in
a little bit. Yeah, I mean, you're not trying to underthrow it, but if it's look, a 50-50 ball, for if either player is doing the job, the other guy shouldn't be able to make the play, but the advantage should go to the receiver because he's the receiver and he knows what's happening.
Right, but you don't let a guy off the hook just because he knows his guy will win. Now, are there some look, has Ben thrown some footballs that some guys have bailed him out on? Absolutely. Does that make Ben a bad quarterback? No. But in the context of what we're trying to do right now with a young quarterback, we have to analyze every throw because he doesn't have many opportunities. You cannot be result-driven. Just as if both those balls had been intercepted, should we be down on James Washington?
No, yeah, you never kind of blame the receiver for bad throw there.
Right. Well, in the same aspect, you can't.
Although we do criticize receivers who don't challenge, balls that are underthrown.
Sure.
I mean, we did that with Sammy Coates. We did that. Yeah, we've done it with plenty of guys.
Absolutely, and
that's Antonio Brown's greatest trait, right? I mean, he challenges every football. I mean, it's hard to remember one in 8 years that he didn't challenge, even if it was a terrible throw.
Right, and the thing that I'm getting at with Dobbs is, look, he is made. He was the better of the 2 quarterbacks, just by far against the Packers, between him and Rudolph. I really thought he was. I thought his accuracy for the most part was better. I was glad to see him pushing the football down the field more. Remember, only 2 balls against the Eagles went more than 10 yards down the field. One was a touchdown to Patterson. The other one was picked off. He did a lot of things better in this game. But let's not put him up on the pedestal that the Steelers will get a 3rd-round pick for him just yet. Because, I mean, quite honestly, those two touchdowns, if they're interceptions, the narrative's a little bit different about him today than it is right now. Also, that deep ball to James Washington, that wasn't all that far of a distance, right? I mean, that should have been 6. Am I correct?
Yeah.
All right. And then we don't know how it would have played out, but the deep ball down the seam to, I think it was either Griffey or Tevin Jones that the feet were tangled up. That was quote unquote an interceptable ball as it played out. Now, it's hard to label it that because of the receiver and the DB getting their feet tangled up. So we'll never know what would have happened there. What I'm getting at is it wasn't a perfect performance by Dobbs, and I still don't see what all the frustration is and what all the to-do is about him possibly being not making the roster. I mean, the odds are that there are only going to be 3, and barring anything happening, it's going to be Ben, Jones, and Rudolph. I mean, is it an end-all, do-all if you do lose him, and not only lose him off the roster, but lose him to another team? And quite simply, the answer I think right now is no.
Big fat no.
I mean, obviously, I wish there was a way that they could keep him, and for people to say Magic to just throw him, just put him on IR and all like that. Look, people, I know there's this mystique about just throwing people on IR, but there are rules about their split salaries involved with a lot of these guys. It's just not that simple. Well, just stash him on IR. There can be some grievances that come out of that. Because, I mean, if a guy has a split contract, you're costing him money, and you're also costing him an opportunity maybe to catch on with another team at a higher salary. So don't stop using that, just throw him on IR. If he's injured and he deserves to go on IR, that's one thing. But you just don't stash people that are not injured on IR. That mentality has got to go away as far as the fan base goes. I wish there was a way that the Steelers could potentially keep.
They may have him on the practice squad. You know, he may get through.
But even so, how feasible is that? You know, when and how much work would he get on the practice squad if you're keeping 4 quarterbacks? To me, you're wasting a practice squad spot to have a 4th string quarterback.
Well, the answer is, if you have if you end up keeping 4 running backs and a fullback, then you don't need that running back spot on the practice squad. So, I mean, it all depends how it plays out. But look, if your view, and I don't know, look, maybe the Steelers like Landry Jones enough that they see him as being a guy who'll be with the team 3, 4, 5 more years. Now, whether it's the number 2 guy or number 3 guy, you would assume Mason Rudolph's going to take a step in front of him, next year. But maybe then he becomes the Byron Leftwich, Charlie Batch, whatever, the veteran presence, and you just sign him to another 2-year, $5 million deal. And you don't need Josh Dobbs around, and the practice squad is, well, it would be nice. It's not necessary. So I think, some of that's just bigger picture thinking that I don't know the answer to, but I'd certainly be content having Landry Jones sign another 2-year, $5 million deal at the end of this one, which comes is up at the end of the year. And if he's your number 3 quarterback, so be it. And that means you don't really have to draft a quarterback, certainly not this coming year in 2019, and probably not in 2020 either, depending on what kind of steps Mason Rudolph takes going forward. So, it's all there are big picture things that Kevin needs to think about that I'm sure he is thinking about in making these types of decisions. But yeah, my odds are that I think it's, I really think it's 0% barring injury that Josh Dobbs is on the Steeler 53-man roster after Labor Day. I think there's a 40% chance that Josh Dobbs is on this, a 50% chance that Josh Dobbs, actually, I think it's higher than that, 60% chance Josh Dobbs is on the Steeler practice squad. I think there's a 30% chance he's on somebody else's practice squad. And I'd say there's a 5% chance he's on somebody else's roster and a 5% chance he's a free agent kind of first week of the season.
Okay, what else do we have? Steeler related, and then we'll get into the Bengals making a move.
I mean, just injuries around the league. Anything that jump out at you in terms of what's going on?
Well, I mean, there's so many.
I mean, Josh Gordon's back in Cleveland. That's good to see.
But do you think Josh Gordon will make it by week 1?
Yeah. I mean, I think he'll be on the 53. Yeah. How about AJ? Do you not think so?
I wonder what kind of. I mean, how much time does he? I wonder how much time he needs right now. I mean, we still got 3 weeks as of Sunday before the first game. He's still not able to practice, right? So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I suppose it's feasible. I mean, how much?
He's working out, and they just haven't put him in 11 on 11 yet. So he's working out on the side.
And you would still think that there's some, you want to get him on the same page with the quarterbacks in some aspect. It's not, I'll tell you this, it's not a great situation for them to be in.
Better than him not being there, right?
Right, better than him not being. I mean, the guy still makes plays. He's extremely tough. He's tough to cover regardless. And look, if everybody stays healthy with them, with Landry and Gordon and who's the other young kid? AC out of Florida, Callaway, and Rashard. Who is it? Rashard Higgins. They got a nice little receiving core over there. It's just that how quickly are they going to be able to get on the same page there? Is the offensive line going to be able to hold up and those sort of things? They got some running backs over there as well too. Makes you kind of wonder how they're going to be able to keep all of them. Who they got? The kid that was with I'm drawing a blank. The kid that was over in San Francisco. That they brought over. They obviously have Duke Johnson.
Carlos Hyde. Yeah.
Right.
Look, I've been talking about it for 3 months. Their skill positions, they get talented guys. I mean, Duke Johnson's a player.
Right. I think Duke Johnson, great out of the backfield. He can do a lot of things for you. And then they got Nick Chubb on top of it out of
Georgia. Yeah.
Out of Georgia.
They get talented guys.
When you look at their skill positions, outside of maybe quarterback, I mean, look, it'd be interesting to see how Tyrod Taylor starts the season here and how long it takes him to get to Baker Mayfield. And obviously their offensive line is going to be questions, but, you look at their wide receiver and their running back position, if they can stay healthy, they should be in decent shape there.
Yeah, interesting. Did you see? So apparently the Seahawks offered a second rounder for Jacoby Brissett, seeing Andrew Luck go out and perform well. That's a lot to ask to have a backup quarterback, but it's a lot to ask for a backup quarterback. You would think that the Indianapolis may jump on that. George Iloka, as you mentioned to me earlier in the day, cut by the Bengals. And then the Jets quarterback situation is a really interesting one with Teddy Bridgewater and obviously Sam Darnold getting all the most of the snaps with the first team going into this weekend's game. Adrian Peterson with the Skins getting a look. A bunch of and along with Jamal Charles.
Yeah, I was surprised that Iloka was cut by the Bengals, and in a depressed safety market right now. I mean,
you're having trouble finding work, huh?
Well, I mean, I think he'd be a good fit in Green Bay right away. But what are these guys willing to take? I tell you, somebody that don't like to see this is Mike Mitchell still looking for work. Just he gets a couple of guys off the market and one comes back on. Mike Mitchell's still out of work. It'll be interesting to see Iloka how, and he's a good guy to my understanding. A good guy to have around in the locker room as well too. From my understanding as well. I was surprised. Well, what this means is what? It means Jesse Bates is going to be right there in the starting lineup right away, right? So Mike Brown. If Mike Brown can save a couple of nickels, he's going to, and that's a route that he's going to go there. So it'll be interesting to see where Iloka ends up right away here. AJ
McCarron busting his collarbone, that takes him out of the opening day starter conversation, and you'd have to think now, Nate Peterman maybe is going to end up being the starter for Buffalo. I mean, look, obviously you've got Josh Allen as the high pick. You're going to throw him in the fire right away, or is it going to be Peterman? And you got to feel a little bit bad for McCarron because this was an opportunity for him to kind of show it right up front on a Buffalo team that now I think people are. I think Buffalo surprised a lot of people. Obviously, they were a playoff team last year. Remember, I know you remember. They gave the Jags all they could handle in one of the most boring playoff games you'll ever see in NFL history. But the perception is, correctly or incorrectly, that they aren't going to be particularly good this year. And obviously a lot of that rests on what people think of the quarterback play.
Yeah, and Kyle Williams, their big defensive tackle, suffered some sort of leg injury the other night too. So that's going to hurt them. Yeah, they might. Boy, and that's not the division to have problems in, is it?
It is not, and people are, it seems like every year hope springs eternal for Dolphin fans. I do think the Jets are going to be an interesting team. Everybody expected them to, they were talking about them winning no games last year, and they surprised everybody. Their quarterback situation's, fascinating. To see how that plays out, and the coaching staff deserve some credit for what they got out of that team last year. So, we'll see if that division gets competitive, because it hasn't been forever. And certainly I fully expect the Patriots to kind of win it comfortably, just like I expect the Steelers to win it comfortably, but that's why they play the games.
That's exactly why they play the games. Be interesting to see against what are you expecting to see in the return game against the Titans? Do you think Sutton's the first one they roll out there?
Let me answer that Wednesday. I'm going to give that a little more thought.
All right, and what's your thought, on the 2 touchdowns after going back throwing that Terrell Edmonds? I see Terrell Edmonds getting beat up quite a bit on the Twitter machine for him giving up the 2 touchdowns to the 2 tight ends the other night.
I said on Friday, you can't cover Jimmy Graham for 7 seconds or however long it was. You give Aaron Rodgers that kind of time, he's going to find a guy. So, did he get beat? Yeah. Am I holding him responsible? Not really. And on the other one, the fade, it was a perfect throw and a perfect catch, and he was all over him. Yeah, he could have knocked it out of his hands. He didn't, but I just tipped my cap to the other guys on that one. I like I said on Friday, I'm not bothered by either of those plays.
Yeah, I think you take your hat off and you hand it to the quarterbacks and the tight ends on those plays. That one to Jimmy Graham, that ball. I mean, Jimmy Graham's what 6'6", 6'7", and Aaron Rodgers put that ball like 3 feet over his head. So I mean, we're talking what, almost 10 feet off the ground. Where Jimmy Graham caught that, I mean, Terrell Edmonds would have needed a lead pipe, a folding chair, in order to defend that one. How safe is Nat Berhe?
I think pretty safe in special teams. I mean, again, look, he looked bad on the play where Brian Allen dove in front and didn't make the play, and Berhe didn't close the tackle. None of the safeties have looked particularly good. He has obviously benefited from the Penn State kid, the 5th round pick, with Marcus Allen, not being on the field, so the competition isn't really there. So I think he was going to get a spot, and I don't see anybody taking it. I mean, Jordan Dangerfield is, we can go through the defensive backs again. The numbers, how many are you going to have? Is it 10? Is it 11? How are you going to split up the numbers? But I would think he makes the team. I would say 80%, 85% safe.
What is that old stat that I had about the players that Kevin Colbert signs before as free agents before, like, end of May?
There was, the one who didn't make it was the running back last year from Kansas City, right? He's the exception to the rule.
Him and Kevin Barlow from even further back, I think, but I think Kevin Barlow was signed a little bit later in the offseason many moons ago. But yeah, Niles Davis was a rarity. It just goes to show you that it's possible that you get cut. Now Berhe, you gave a little bit more money to than Niles Davis last year, but probably not too terribly much more. How much does Danny Smith need to be banging the table for Nat Berhe over Keith Butler banging the table for Nat Berhe? That's
well, I think it's Danny. They hired him to be Robert Golden, so it's going to be more Danny.
What if Fitzgerald Toussaint can be Nat Berhe?
Well, maybe somebody else can be. And, if it's Nat Berhe or DHB or Fitz Toussaint, that would be an interesting question if you only got room for 2 or 1.
Yeah, I mean, that's. I think because of what happened in that game the other night, I think a few people are starting to question whether Nat Berhe is the lock that we've had him being most of, since he was signed. That kind of thing there. So definitely something to watch in these final 2 preseason games here to see if guys get, maybe a guy like Jordan Dangerfield gets a little bit of good solid work with the second team this week, against the Titans and all. All right, what else do we have here? I thought Jalen Samuels for what he did in that game, or what he was asked to do against the Packers. I thought he did good yards after the catch, yards after contact, first contact. He only had one pass protection really in that game as well too. I thought he showed some decent things in there, but with that said, I'm still keeping a guy like Fitzgerald Toussaint over a guy like Jalen Samuels. I got to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm totally with you. Stephen Ridley and Fitz over Samuels at this point.
Man, Fitzgerald Toussaint, and look, I get it. You want to talk about bias with the fan base? Ever since that fumble against Denver in the playoffs a couple of years ago, people just don't. They see.
Yeah, it's Eli Rogers with fumbling the punt against the Bears. You make one mistake in a visible moment like that, and you're for some people you are scarred.
Right, and Toussaint certainly is. Look, I'm not going to pretend that Toussaint's a Pro Bowler or anything like that, but you want to talk about one of my favorite things to watch lately? And do us at Steelers Depot put too much emphasis on pass protection for running backs?
I think a little bit. I think it's it's on the list of skills. Look, if you're gonna laud Le'Veon Bell for being a great pass catcher. You can't be both a great pass catcher and a great pass blocker at the same time. So, you need to think about what percentage of the time he's asked to do it. Now, having said that, it's an incredibly valuable skill. It's not more valuable than the other skills at running back, because that's why a lot of guys who can't do it are in the league, because it's not first or second on the list of things that you need to do. But man, guys who can do it are incredibly valuable, and guys who can do it when they have to make a decision whether to go out in the route or stay in, that's incredibly valuable. So that's not just being a good pass protector, that's being a smart football player too. And that's worth a lot. So, too much emphasis, I don't really know, what's too much, but I do think in general it is undervalued. So, maybe you're just compensating for the general kind of lack of focus on it.
True or false? There's a lot of guys sitting at home right now, not in NFL camps, that can run well with the football.
Yeah, it's Ree Archer.
But there's not a lot of them that can both run with the football and pass protect.
Or catch or be smart yeah. There's certainly not many. There's probably none who aren't in an NFL camp.
Right, and I hate to bring it up, but Jon Gruden had a quote the other day talking about if you can't pass protect, it's going to be hard to be a running back in this league. It's just one of the things that you have to do. You can get away with not having that skill, but your quarterback's probably going to get hit maybe one too many times because of it. I just really like what Fitz Toussaint does as a pass protector and as a physical player overall, and that his ability to play special teams and pass protect, to me right now, if Jalen Samuels was to be cut right now, would anybody around the league flinch at him?
Not a fifth round pick at NC State. No, not even might get a phone call, but he's not getting picked up.
He might end up on a practice squad somewhere, right? But he's not a guy you're falling all over yourself to get on to 53 right now.
For sure, no.
And that's and it comes down to at the bottom end of those rosters, and especially if you're a number 3 running back, there's certain things that you've got to be more valuable at, in my opinion. I'm not saying, well, I guess I am saying right now, I just don't see Jalen Samuels making it. Maybe the Steelers will feel different about him, but I have him pegged for the practice squad right now. Okay, what else do we have? Anything around the league or anything other Steeler related stuff?
No, it'd be fun to talk to Hookie Bro on Wednesday.
All right, so we'll have him lined up. That should be a great conversation. I always enjoy having him on. In the meantime, make sure you're listening to this show. Oh, Dave, we're on iHeartRadio now, too. I got us on iHeartRadio as well. So people, if you have that iHeartRadio app, I reckon that you should be able to search the show out that way, and I don't think it'll hurt us that way if you listen to the show. But we would prefer you listen the Spreaker way, specifically the Spreaker app, if you were listening on a device. But in the meantime, you can follow me on the Twitter machine at Steelers Depot. You can follow David Todd on Twitter at David M. Todd. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, and we appreciate all the great emails we've gotten the last couple weeks. We certainly do appreciate that. The Terrible Podcast at gmail.com. If you like what we do and you want to donate to the cause, you can go to SteelersDepot.com. Hit that donate button, upper right navigational bar. Also, we have not been pushing this, but this feature on SteelersDepot.com is now available as well. If you like Steelers Depot and you don't like the ads, well, I've got an ad-free version of the site available for you for $25 a year. Look up in that upper navigational bar, click the ad-free button, and it'll take you to a sign-up page. And I think that's an extremely great deal if you just like to go to the site and you don't want to see the ads. You win and we win by that going that route. And in the meantime, until Wednesday, David, have a good day.
As always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Dave.